Good afternoon and welcome to the Canadian Lacrosse Association's third goalie networking roundtable discussion. Now, we're going to try over the next hour to educate and hopefully entertain you regarding lacrosse goaltending with some of the best to have ever played the position. As an indication of the quality of our panel, our group combined, and this is I've got my abacus and my slide rule out, and figured out that our group had combined over 80 years at the senior, major, and professional levels, covering almost 40 years, going from roughly 1970 to 2010. And over that time, the group has amassed 25 major championships, including Founders Cups, President's Cups, Minto Cups, Man Cups, and of course, NLL championships. Of course, the other thing that does is make us really old. But anyway, without any further ado, I'd like to introduce our illustrious panel. First of all, coming to us from beautiful Baptiste Lake in Ontario, and I know it's beautiful because I Googled it. It really is lovely. I played junior A for Whitby in the OLA and played with the great Brooklyn teams in Ontario Major, Wayne Colley. Coming in from Sydney, and to those of you who are not from BC, Sydney is a suburb of Victoria, BC, played junior A for Burnaby and had a great senior career in the Western Lacrosse Association with the newest Mr. Sound Bellies, Rod Banister. Hailing from Portland, now at least hailing from Portland, Oregon, also played junior A lacrosse for Burnaby and played senior with Burnaby and Coquitlam and had a phenomenal NLL or MILL and NLL career with the Philadelphia Wings and Portland, Dallas Eliuk. And last but not least, last but youngest of the group, calling in from Kitchener, Ontario, played junior in Kitchener and played senior lacrosse or major lacrosse in Ontario, primarily with Brampton, and played in the MILL and the NLL, primarily with Rochester and Buffalo, Steve Dietrich. And my name is Dave Evans. I'm in scenic Langley, BC, which also is a suburb of Vancouver. I also played my junior lacrosse in Burnaby, played senior lacrosse for the Vancouver Burrards of the Western Lacrosse Association, and played for the Montreal Québécois in the original National Lacrosse League back in the 70s. Now, with these introductions, I'm not going to go into details of what everyone's accomplishments and accolades. They're all on the Hall of Fame website, on the bio that introduced this session, and you can, if all else fails, Google it. And not only, and you can also, for Steve and Dallas, they have Wikipedia pages, just because they're big shots. Apparently the rest of us aren't. So I don't know if any of you guys want to comment on why you guys got Wikipedia pages, is there, and or how you got them. Feel free. Rod, Steve, any?
I think you guys, when you guys were playing, I don't even think there was computers or internet. That might be why.
We chiseled everything on stones.
When Dave played, there wasn't a microcomputer yet, but
yeah, next you're going to make fun of me because I still have my flip phone. But a perfect segue, because about old stuff. We're going to talk about the early days in lacrosse and get to know all of you a little bit about your lacrosse careers. So first of all, we'll just kind of go in order here. How old were you when you started playing lacrosse? And did you start as a goaltender, or were you drawn to it, or whatever? And we'll start out with Wayne. Wayne?
Well, I started out as an out player. In baseball, they rotate you through, and I walked over to the cross box in order to see what was going on over there. Long story short, I signed up and I was a player. And right at playoffs, our goalie went on holidays, and the shortest and the chubbiest kid got a chance to put the pads on. So I stuck at that because I thought it was pretty good that I didn't have to run up and down the floor anymore.
Rod?
well, I started in novice, and they stuck all the first-year kids on the B team, but we played against the A teams. And I joked that a wise coach stuck the fat kid in net, and the rest is history. But yeah, I didn't really like it at first. We were losing games against the A teams, 17-0 or so. But some of the games I was making like 85 stops, so the coach really wanted me to stick it out, and I stayed with it and was glad I did.
And Dallas?
I started as a runner. I want to say type A, and our goalie went down with an injury.
And I remember they were discussing whether or not they should call the game. And our coach asked if anyone would like to step in between the pipes. And like you see, everybody kind of stepped backwards, and I was the only one left standing there. And they threw me in net and haven't looked back ever since.
And Chugger, what about you?
Well, like three of us, I started when I was 8. And I went out for my first house league with my nice new wooden stick. And I happened to be the chubbiest kid, and nobody wanted to go in net. So the coach basically went around the room and stopped at me and said, "Here's the pads." And I guess away you go. And then it's stuck ever since.
I think I see a theme developing there. I like myself. I started late by today's day. I started when I was 11, and same idea. Kid next door played. Honestly had never even heard of lacrosse, and so I went out and same thing. Fat kid, put the pads on, and I absolutely hated it because I was so bloody bad. So I quit at the end of the season. Went back a couple of years later, and then and really enjoyed it and got into it. Now, once you made whatever changes there was, whether it was somebody getting hurt or whatever, what attracted you to the position? To the position? Is there any particular facet of goaltending that really attracted you and made you eventually love it? Yeah, we'll go in the same order, Wayne.
Well, back in my era, there's 4 of us here on the panel, and we each have different eras, and it's hard to compare, Chugger's era to my era versus your era. Okay, so back then, a goalie, once they stopped the ball, they would take off running up the floor to pass it to draw somebody to you to create the odd man. That's how I first started, and especially when you got into the junior ranks. The late great Jim Bishop, if you didn't run up with the ball as a goalie, you'd be sitting on the in the stands. You wouldn't even be on the bench. He wouldn't allow you to stand there. So it was a different. I didn't have him as a coach, but Ronnie Pithers at the time was from his era, and we had to do that. So passing and catching was a major thing for us. Major.
Yeah, Ron.
Well, I think that's one of the big differences in the game between Ontario and BC. We didn't really see the goalies running up the floor in BC. And I remember the first time I saw, I think it was Buff McCready take off with the ball. I couldn't believe it because we never saw it out west. But for me, I enjoyed playing, goal in street hockey and that kind of thing. And, as I say, the coach put me in, and then I just stuck with it and had some success and, got to play up with the age group above me and that kind of thing. And that sort of got me hooked.
Yeah, Alex?
Yeah, when I was younger, I played ice hockey as well. I started as a skater and also played net because of an injury. And when I stepped into the lacrosse goal, I really enjoyed it. And we were probably the doormats of the league. And instead of getting losing games by 19, 20 to 10, we were losing closer games. And I did well. And I really enjoyed the challenge of trying to keep the other team off the scoreboard.
Yeah, in my case, I think the thing that really attracted me to the position was, I guess it's kind of an ego thing in a way, kind of like all of you guys have said, is that you have such an impact on the game, and it's great to have that. Steve, what about you?
Yeah, you know what, I was like Rod said, I was lucky to be pretty good right from the start, and I got to play a lot, which was the big thing. I in hockey, I played house league, so you play for 2 minutes, and then you got to go sit on the bench for 4 minutes while the kids played. In lacrosse as a goalie, I got to keep playing, and my mom always promised me that if we won, she'd take me to McDonald's after the game, and I was okay at it. So we ended up winning a lot of games, so I got to go to McDonald's a lot, so I was pretty happy.
We're back to our recurring theme. I know my dad used to take us all for ice cream cones, but same thing. All different types of health food. Funny, Wayne, you mentioned Ron Pitter. This is really going off the script here, but Ron Pitter is the guy that actually got me interested in Jimmy Buffett. So there you go. That's
great man.
No, yeah, good guy, Ron. Now, I think I mentioned, but now certainly back in my day, maybe a little less for Dallas and Steve. There was no such thing as goaltending coaches. You were really, really lucky if your head coach, really knew much about the position. As I said, my first coach in Pee Wee that year that I hated, honestly didn't even know what order the pads went on in. I just kind of took him home and fumbled around and figured it all out and didn't like it. But so I know in my case, I know I learned by watching, by going to senior games, junior games, and watching guys. And I'm just interested to know. I know I watched guys. Merv Schweitzer, he's a guy that played for the Vancouver Burrards and eventually for the Coquitlam Adanacs out here in the Western Lacrosse Association. I watched Merv a lot. Skip Chapman, who I ended up actually playing with and against later on, but Skip played for Victoria and Vancouver. And those are guys that I watched, and just among others. So, with you guys, any particular guys that you watched and emulated, or that looked up to, that mentored you later on? Stick with our same order, Wayne.
Yeah, I was very fortunate in the area where I lived. We had the Minnow Cups going on there with the Green Gales. They won 7 years in a row, so I got to see Merv Marshall and those guys all the time. I got to see the Pat Bakers and Merv Marshalls and Porky Russells and Larry Smeltzers and that type of thing. And also playing against a bunch of guys like the Barry Marooks, the Bob Kalevi, Mac Mods, Timmy Barry, Ted Zawicki. Like there's numerous Hall of Famers that through my era was going on, and I'm sure later on the Hall of Fame will have a lot of those guys and the other guys, the newer guys in the Hall of Fame, like Chugger.
Rod?
I had some great coaches over the years, but as you say, none of them were really goalie coaches. I look back and I remember attending a lacrosse school when I was 11, and Ted Gurney, who was with the Grandview Cablevision when they won the Canada Games, they had a lacrosse school, and he coached me in that lacrosse school. And then Dave, yourself, when I got to junior, mentored us a bit. And then, of course, when I played up with you with the Burrards, you were a big help to me. But in terms of watching, Don Hamilton, I always enjoyed, Joe Como, yourself, Larry Smeltzer. Those are the guys that I would keep an eye on. And yeah, we just sort of taught ourselves until, basically from the time I went to that lacrosse school to the time I got to junior, it's just sort of taught yourself.
Alex?
I grew up in East Vancouver, and for geographic reasons, we'd go up to the Forum and watch the Burrards play. And then once I got into playing lacrosse, I remember you coming to Grandview Community Center and holding a goalie clinic, and you were showing your pads. You had these felt pads with little metal plates on the arms and on the chest. So you were a huge mentor to me. And then I was fortunate enough to have you coach me in Philadelphia. And yeah, you were the man.
Well, thanks for making me feel even older than I am. And Steve?
For me, like I say, I started in novice and I fumbled around until Bantam. And my coach in Bantam was a young guy that had just finished his junior career by the name of Ian McGough. And he basically took a liking to me, I guess, and took me under his wing. And I swear to God, he would come to my house every day as a first year Bantam that I was, and he would shoot lacrosse balls at me, or tennis balls, it would have been then, for hours. And then every tournament we would just sit and study shooters, and he just taught me so much. So Ian was probably the biggest influence I ever had, and he probably helped get me at least to the fundamental level to where I never thought I would ever get to.
Yeah, I think it's great that today, I mean, as I mentioned, like all of us have at some point been goaltending coaches, and some still are. And I think it's nice that guys like ourselves and tons and tons of others of former goaltenders have gone back and become coaches and work with young kids, because it sure makes a difference. Because it's as you guys all well know, and it's just like any other position, you've got to learn the basic fundamental skills of the game. After that, you develop your own style, but you've got to have those basic fundamental skills, and it's nice to not have to kind of go out and do it on your own. And actually, I'd be remiss if I didn't mention, we're talking mentors. Rod actually mentioned Don Hamilton. I never really watched Donnie Hamilton play because he got shipped up country. Of course, his claim, well, among other claims to fame, got a shutout in the Mann Cup in 1961. Wow. In 1962, got shipped up to Kamloops, which, for people who don't know, BC is about 3 hours away from Vancouver, with his job. and he lost out on about 6. He came back in 1968. So he lost out on 7 years. So I never really watched him as a player, but I had the honor of playing with Hammy my first few years of senior. And he was a tremendous influence. And just a shout out to him because he's quite sick right now. He's been in the hospital for, God, almost 3 months. Yeah, he has some kind of a stomach ailment. So shout out to him. But yeah, he mentored me more as a teammate than as a goaltender. Anyway, on to your senior and pro careers. We're doing this, trying to do this chronologically to a certain extent, but as I mentioned, there's like 25 national championships among the group of us here. Some of you is a lot more than others, but other things. I'm just interested if you could just pick out maybe 2 or 3 highlights of that career. I know mine's really easy. I got one man cup, so that's easy. That's my highlight, the 77 man cup, and not just the man cup itself, but all the lead up season to it was phenomenal. But just highlights of your career, whether it's on the floor, off the floor, whatever. Wayne.
Oh, geez, you had to have Rod here, didn't you?
Oh,
I know where this is going.
carry on.
I know where this is going.
Rod and I we're good friends now, and we've been talking with each other for many times. And I can't believe that Cowison would score on you. I honestly, truly felt so sorry for you. And I said to myself when it happened that we're not counting that because that's not the way I personally wanted it to end. It was good ending, but it just wasn't right. And to top it off, my brother was the guy that last touched the ball, and Cowie tried to pick the ball up, and he put the ball in the open net because Rod got out of the way, and that won us the Man Cup in Game 7. And I totally feel sorry for him, but man, oh man, I couldn't believe you didn't fight him right there.
I'm looking at the smile on your face. I don't see too much feeling sorry for him in that wall-to-wall grid. So, Rod, I think it's about time. You should probably mention maybe a couple of Minto Cups you played against Whitby.
Well, Wayne, do you want to finish with talking about your career, or?
What career? I had a great time and lots of memories. That's the best thing ever. And with the panel that's here right now, I love to see how you guys and myself included, we've all put something back into the game that we've learned along the lines and the years we've all put in. I don't usually talk about my personal career because it's I worry about tomorrow, that type of thing.
That's a good attitude, Rod.
Put me on the spot. Well, I guess the firsts are always the best, they say. And my first Minto Cup, we won it in Ontario, which no BC team has ever done since. And before that, it was 1953. So since 53 till now, we're the only BC team to win the Minto Cup when it's been played in Ontario. So that was a great accomplishment, and the whole team is very proud of that. We had a reunion a couple of years ago, a 40-year reunion, and it was like we had seen each other the day before. Everyone was just very good friends, and it was so close, and that was terrific. And then my first man went on quite a tear. We barely made the playoffs. We won the last game of the regular season to get the 4th playoff spot. And then we went on a tear and won 12 of the next 13 to win the Man Cup at home. So that's a great feeling.
You didn't tell me who you're playing against, Rod.
I didn't tell them what?
Who you're playing against.
Oh, we were playing against Brampton. Oh, you mean in the Minto? Yeah, in the Minto we faced Wayne. Wayne and I have had a lot of great battles. I think we played in a couple of Minto Cups against each other and then several Man Cups. I don't even know how many, but a lot. And then I go to Prague and who's there coaching Netherlands, and I'm with Hong Kong, and we're at a tournament in Prague. So it's incredible.
Well, you guys both had great teams in the 80s. I mean, Westminster and Brooklyn were the dominant teams of the West and the East in the 80s. So, and I remember actually talking about that game you were talking about, Wayne. Rod doesn't want to talk about. Callison definitely doesn't want to talk about. I was actually broadcasting that game for, I don't know what it was, Shaw or Rogers, whoever the local cable carrier. I remember watching that and just, it was painful, just feeling bad for you. And the whole coming back from 3 games was a tremendous, and that's one of the, I don't know if that's ever happened in a Mann Cup before or since, but that was just a phenomenal thing. And just I gotta go back to Wayne for a sec. The whole, I guess the whole team feeling about being down 3 and then coming back and winning 4 straight. Just explain that to us, because I said I've never done it. I've been down. I've been on teams that have been down 2 games and come back and won, or 3-1 and come back, but never down 3-0.
Well, back then it was real lacrosse where everyone ran up and down the floor, and it was very exciting to play. And the games were all close, as Rod can testify, all 7 games. So anyone could have won that series. And I can say now, where New Westminster made the mistake is we were staying at the College Place corral there, and yeah, and they had their victory party all set up in the party room there in the hotel we're staying in. So the my superstar coach Peter Vipon got me out of bed and brought me down and showed me everything was all set up for the victory. So before the game, I says, "Don't worry about it. I'm going to win the next 4 straight." And luck has it, we did win 4 straight. So it was you poked the bear and you woke him up type thing. And it's a long story, but it's a true story.
And I don't recall the College Place as having a party room. I thought it was just one big party room. But anyway,
What's floor, Dave?
I think it was the Royal Towers, actually.
It was, yeah. Sorry. It was the Royal Towers.
all the towers.
8 lots in the other place, the College Place.
Oh, okay. Dallas, changing the subject quickly.
Thank you.
Oh, fond lacrosse memories, man. That's such a loaded question. Obviously, winning the championships. My first championship, beating Buffalo in the odd in '94 was a huge victory. We lost to them the previous 2 years. That you were the coach of those games. I'm sure you remember them well.
Very well.
Losing, I got my bell rung in '92. Got knocked out of the game, and we lost that game to Buffalo. Then the following season, the championship was in Buffalo, and Flynn, you remember Chris Flynn took the knees out of, I think, Keenan maybe the last minute and a half of the game.
Yeah.
They go on the power play. Volker flashes Kilgore, and they score a game-winning goal on us in the last minute. So those were 2 big losses. And to go back into Buffalo in '94 and beat them soundly, we trounced them in the championship game. It's great to be in a game and play an integral part towards that victory. But that game, we could have had a cheering goal and we were going to beat Buffalo. There was no pressure at all in that game. That was a very fond memory, watching the Gate brothers light it up. After that, probably not '98 championship in the NLL, we lost Gary in the preseason, Gary Gate, to Baltimore, and all the media and the powers that be had us written off because we lost Gary. And as it turned out, we ended up playing Baltimore in the final and beating them in the first NLL best of 3 series for the championship. That was a great, sweet victory. And then I can't go on without talking about the first Mann Cup. And it took me a long time to win it in 2001 when we beat Brampton in the Pacific Coliseum. I mean, we were down all game. In Game 7, our team, we were patched together, as I'm sure Brampton was as well. And we were down, I think, by 3 or 4 after the second period. And we turned on our jets late in the game, and Colin Doyle scored the game-winning goal with under a minute to go. And that was exhilarating. So that was a huge moment for me. That of the 3, probably that 2001 Mann Cup was huge.
And Steve?
Just a little side story to what Dallas just said. That '94 game, I was up in the Oranges watching the game. And I think, Dallas, if I'm right, you guys were down, I think, a couple goals at halftime. And I went to get an ice cream cone. And by the time I got back to my seats, I think you guys were up by 3 or 4 in the second half. So it was like almost like a 6-goal swing real fast. But that's just a little sidebar story that Dallas is down on the floor, making saves and winning championships, and I'm up in the oranges eating an ice cream. But my most fondest memory probably goes back to 2003. My mom was always disappointed that I had to leave Kitchener after junior to go play somewhere else. So she was the mouth of the South in Kitchener to try and get a team. And her and Al Orth finally got a senior B team, and we were able to get that team for 2003. My mom unfortunately passed away Christmas of 2002, so she didn't get to see us, and we ended up, as an expansion team, we ended up winning the President's Cup in 2003 in Owen Sound. So emotionally for me, that tugged at the heartstrings, but that was my most fondest memory, because you always say they're looking down at you and smiling. I really believe my mom was looking down and smiling at not something just that she created, but that, she gave Kitchener a champion, which was great.
That's great.
Now we talked about a little bit about in a little bit of humor, not too much humor, but the Brooklyn Westminster rivalry in the '80s, and just in general, any particular rivalries or like teams that you played against, junior, senior, pro, that you really had a hate on for, or had difficulty with, or whatever? Any particular rivalries like that for you guys? Oh, Wayne, sorry.
Yeah, it's hard. Like again, it's different era. We were basically taught to hate everybody we played against. So it's a total different saying there. They were tough games. There was a lot of tougher players. One, they used wooden sticks. They didn't use the plastic sticks back then, so they straightened things out themselves during the game. So it's hard to say. There's the Bramptons, and then there's the Peterboroughs. Brooklyn Peterborough was always a barn burner there because they were so close. So it's just again, it was great lacrosse, very good.
Yeah, Rod.
Yeah, in the WLA, we certainly had a huge rivalry with Coquitlam. And as Wayne was saying, it was true hatred. And so we really went hard against them. And also, obviously, the Victoria Shamrocks. It's ironic that I live over here now, because I was probably the least popular place at the old Memorial Arena. I remember them throwing stuff at me and everything from the crowd. But yeah, I would say in the WLA, those were the two biggest. And then, of course, in the Man Cups, we went against Brooklyn so many times, and it was a lot of the same guys from the Whitby junior team. So yeah, those were huge rivalries, and I think the teams have utmost respect for each other.
Yeah, Dallas.
Wayne made a very good point talking about back in the day when I was getting into senior A lacrosse. The Salmon Bellies were everything. They were winning, and we were taught to dislike our opponents as well. So when I joined the WLA, I was sick and tired of watching the Salmon Bellies constantly winning, always being the team to represent the West for the Man Cup. So there was a personal rivalry. It sure felt good when I got a few years of senior A under my belt, when the Burnaby Lakers, when we faced the Salmon Bellies in the WLA playoffs, and to be able to knock them off that one year, it was fantastic. So yeah, I had a big hatred for the Bellies in the late 80s, early 90s. And then the pro rivalry with Buffalo, you can't deny that. I mean, that was when ESPN had the game of the week, or whatever Prime Network. The games were televised. We were selling the building out. The Buffalo was selling their building out. And when you walked into those arenas, man, the air was electric. So our rivalry with Buffalo, man, it's unmatched. Everybody's friends these days. Everyone gets along with each other. It's a completely different mindset.
Yeah, I remember those games in Buffalo. You had to walk through the stands to get from the dressing room to the floor. How crazy is that? But anyway, Chucker.
Junior, I played KW junior, and we hated Orangeville. Such a big rivalry back in junior, and in the pro league, it was Toronto. When Les got to Toronto, They were the expansion team in Hamilton and then became Toronto, and they started to play offense, defense, and they basically started to take over the league. They were the team that you circled every year because they were the champs, and you just wanted to beat them, and most of the times you didn't, and it just made you more upset for the next time you played them. But yeah, we hated playing Toronto back then.
Yeah, I know when I was, I guess, back in my era, which is before any of you guys, there was no draft. Now there's been a draft in the WLA since 1973. My first year as senior was 72, and so you played against the same guys from the time you were a kid all the way up through junior, with a couple of exceptions. And like all of you guys have said, that dislike, hatred, whatever. I know there were times, you'd be walking down the street and there'd be somebody. And in my case, I guess my first couple of years as senior was New West. New West were very strong, late 60s into the early 70s. We had an up and coming young team. So we had a great rivalry with them. And then later on in the 70s, the Victoria rivalry. And the Victoria rivalries were always special because even though Victoria is only 15 kilometers or whatever, something like that, but it's across the water, and you got to take the ferry to get there, etc. So you didn't really know those guys. And so it was always, even later on when the draft came in and you were playing with guys you played against in junior and played against guys you played with, Victoria was always this different thing. So the rivalries of the Victoria, I can remember, were always very, very intense. But the one thing I think, just kind of gleaning from all of our comments, is you hated them, you hated blah, 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 etc. But you didn't really hate the players, you hated the uniform. And there was a tremendous amount of respect. I mean, I know there's the guys that I played against, with Victoria, with New West, with Coquitlam, who are good friends now. And there was such a respect build up. You'd never admit it back then, of course, but you had this tremendous respect for your opposition back in the day. I'm sure it's still there, but because everybody kind of knows each other, playing field together and in the NLL and etc., it's just a little different. Narrowing it down a little bit, any particular players that you played against? Just a couple that really gave you the shakes playing against them, either because maybe they had a howitzer or a shot and weren't terribly accurate with it, or they were maybe a little dangerous, or just guys who were very, very good offensive players that always gave you trouble. Anybody in particular, Mike?
Well, geez, I had the opportunity to play against Gaylord Palace way back then, and he was fantastic. And in my practice, I had the Gate brothers and the Newendikes and Cochran and Ken Devine, Derek Keenan, Johnny Fusco, Lloyd's. Like, I had all kinds. And up in Peterborough, Johnny Grant Sr., like, there was all kinds of people that you didn't know where they're going to come from when they were shooting. And it was just like a guessing game. But I guess we outguessed them, eh, goalies?
That's why we're smarter than everybody else, right?
That's exactly right.
Rod?
Well, I mean, you always feared Kevin Alexander, but it wasn't because he was going to hit you hard. It was because he was going to score on you. Because he was pretty.
Yeah, I missed him. Yeah, you're right. He was Bill Scarfone.
Yeah. So you didn't have to worry about getting injured with him, but a lot of guys had heavy shots like Randy Bryant, Norm Baker. The worst was in practice, to be honest with you. Derek Dixon, he would hit me in the toe every practice practically. He would hit me in the toe, and pads back then didn't cover the toes. Jordy Dean, same thing, big heavy shot, pressing the power play, and he'd belt you with his shot. You mentioned Johnny Fusco. He had a big shot from Brooklyn. But yeah, practices were definitely the worst in terms of getting beat up your thumb and your toes and that kind of thing.
Dallas?
It'd be doing a disservice. I mean, to name one shooter, one or two guys is really difficult. So many of the players gave me made it difficult for me to see the ball or save the ball over the years. But if I had to narrow it down, say maybe Paul Gate, because he would power the ball past me. He had all the moves in his wrist, but he could power it past me. Another shooter that made me a little bit fearful was Kilgore for ripping my helmet off in the championship in '92. Still seeing stars from that. And towards the end of my career, probably John Grant Jr., because he had so many tricks in his bag. You know, he could shoot from anywhere and hit a spot anywhere. So of those three guys, probably.
And Chugger?
Yeah, like Dallas said, you know, Paul, Gary, and JT in my era were three that are on the planet all by themselves. But, you know, I always tried to be a guy that had a book on every shooter. And it seemed like every time I played Darius Kilgore, I was playing checkers and he was playing chess. He was always one step ahead of me. So it almost got to the point where I didn't even want to look at my notes anymore because, you know, he was writing the notes for me to bait me into doing some certain things. But, you know, another guy that, whether I played good, bad, or indifferent, that always seemed to have 3 goals was Micah Kersey. I had no idea where he was shooting, what he was doing. It seemed like every time he shot, I was turning around and getting the ball out of the net.
Yeah, I guess the guys I remember, I mean, I had a lot of guys with heavy shots. Oh, sorry, Wayne.
Here's one here for you that had the softest shot I've ever played against, and he played out in Victoria, was Jim Meredith.
Oh, yeah.
Like, his shot was so soft, like he didn't need equipment, but he always scored. I don't know how he did it.
Well, he had that drop ball. He got me in '83 when they went on to win the Mann Cup. They knocked us out of the playoffs. And it was in overtime, and he took this floating shot that drops, and it bounced and in the net. It was we've laughed about it since then, but yeah, really deceiving.
Yeah, well, another guy like that in my era is Wayne Goss.
Yeah.
Wayne Goss is, if not, I don't know where he is in the all-time scorers now, but he was near the top. Couldn't crack an egg with his shot. But he was so deceptive. Everything came from right up off the shoulder and nothing, you know, and so hard to read. You know, like Steve said, if you had a book on guys, you know, you'd be writing another page every time you played US because Goss would beat you some other way. But the two guys that, other than Wayne, one guy didn't play against him very much, and Wayne and Steve would know is Travis Cook, who played. I guess he played for Six Nations, I guess, in major, but he played in the old National Lacrosse League, played for Quebec City, and he had an absolute rocket of a shot. You know, he'd wind up from another time zone, and he was accurate, always shot high, and he caught me in the chops one night in Quebec City, and I woke up in the dressing room later on. That's before that's before concussions were invented. It was just, you know, you got your bell rung. And this is the prop department here, just for interest. This, I don't know if you can see this. This was the mask I wore back, you know, pretty much all from junior right through senior. Don't ask me why I keep it, but anyway. So that sort of adds to the fear factor. But the other one too, Ron already mentioned, was Sander. Didn't because his key came into senior near the end of my career. The biggest thing with Kevin is that you didn't just have to worry about him on the floor, you had to worry about everybody else because he saw the floor so well. Had a great shot, great outside shot, accurate, had all the tricks. But if a teammate had the head of his stick open, Kevin would find it. And to me, those are the guys that were the most dangerous. Just quickly, hate to single out teammates, but any particular guy that played in front of you that, I don't know, you had a little more faith in, maybe, for lack of a better term, best defensive player that ever played in front of you, or the best, you know, couple. You don't like to single out teammates and insult anybody, but anybody, Wayne?
Well, one guy that stands out in front of my mind that would ever believe this was Terry Boland. He was my all-time favorite. I told him more than once he is my all-time favorite. I don't know how he could go to the bench every single shift, have a heart attack, come back out and play. I don't know how he did it. He was a school teacher by trade, so maybe it's their easy jobs they have. I don't know, but he is my all-time favorite. And I've had lots of D guys that play well. We didn't play offense, defense, so you know it's a different era again.
Rod?
Yeah, I mean, everybody played defense back then, so we had an incredible defensive core. You know, you think about Lyle Robinson, Steve Manning, Steve Dees, and Eric House, and, you know, Jordy Dean. The list goes on. It was tremendous defense in New Westminster, and, you know, obviously I wouldn't be here if I didn't have them in front of me.
Yeah, I think we can all say that. Dallas?
Yeah, that's unfair, really. That question, I can't give you an honest answer. There's just so many guys. You know, it's like you said. I grew up playing most three ways. You know, three lines going both ways, and everybody played defense. Everybody played offense. To single someone out, it would be tough. I've got to say Ogilvy. I guess the years in Coquitlam, man, the guy's a beast. He'd intimidate guys just being out on the floor, and then in the pro league. There's so many athletes in Philly, Gabe's, Flynn, all these guys were just monsters out there. Yeah, that's a tough question to answer.
Hey, that's why you get the big bucks. That's why you get the big bucks.
Yeah.
Steve.
Yeah, like Dallas just said, there's so many, but a couple that stand out to me is like back in junior, we had a guy named Mark O'Connell. He was going into his last year when I was a rookie. He's diving in front of shots, blocking shots just to make sure the goalies didn't get many of them. And he played a forceful defense. And then when I was lucky enough to play in Buffalo, Pat McCready and Billy D. Smith. Pat McCready more because he and I just always seemed to be on the same page. We knew what to say to each other, when to say it. And Billy D, just because he was a freak back then, so athletic. And, we called him the eraser, that if he took you in, it's almost like Kyle Rubish is today. If he got you in the corner, he was taking the ball. So you might as well just drop it and give it to him and save yourself a whole lot of grief.
Yeah, I played with various, similar to Rod, really. We had very good defensive teams with Vancouver when I was playing senior. And I don't know why I brought this question up, because now I've kind of stumped myself. But we had a lot of guys. But the one, if I got to pick one guy by the name of Mike Smith. And Mike Smith played junior for South Vancouver. And wasn't really a heralded player. Came into senior, played for 10 or 12 years with the Berards. We had awards for original awards. So I think he was our best defensive player every year he played. Probably didn't knock anybody over his whole career, but he was quick, smart, always drew the checking assignments. Of course, like with all of us, we played, with real lacrosse when you played both ends of the floor. And he also, could get up the floor with his speed, and it was good for 10, 15 goals a year for a guy who was purely would now in today's game, he wouldn't be allowed to cross center floor because his defensive skills were so great. But if I had to single somebody out, and I guess I do, since I'm the idiot who made up the question, I guess Mike would be the one. Okay, let's get into something a little more deep and philosophical here. Not really. I mentioned earlier we've got like 80 years of playing, and beyond that, we've all been coaching and managing and doing various things since our playing careers, and Steve still is at a high level. So obviously the position has changed greatly over the last probably 20, 25 years in particular. And I just want to get your thoughts on how the game has changed, why and not the game so much as goaltending, the position. We'll get to the game in a minute, but just how the position of goaltending has changed over the last 20, 25 years, and why it has changed. And so, Wayne?
Well, right off the bat, I wish that I had the equipment they use today. Back when I started playing net, you used whatever you could get a hold of, about a pair of hockey pants, or a fiber here or there, or whatever you could put on your body. That's basically what you used. So that was your fear, because it hurt when you didn't do it. Bulk yourself up and stuff. It wasn't so much to make you bigger in the net. It's because it hurt. The ball hurt. So there's a start. Now and I'd rather see a 7-6 game or an 8-9 game, that type of thing, versus a 20 to 18 game, because every goalie in the pro leagues and the juniors and the major series, they're just standing in a great big open net and expect you to stop it all the time. And if you have a bad night, it's so easy because the net's so big. They went from the 4-foot net to the 4-9 now, and that extra 9 inches is quite a bit. And the powers to be, they want high scoring games versus low scoring. So I'm on the D side of it versus the O side of it.
Yeah, Rod?
Yeah, the pads have certainly evolved. As I said, our toes were exposed and our ribs were exposed and our thumbs were mush. So certainly, I mean, the pads are tremendous now. I remember when we played, wringing out your belly pad between periods, and it got to the point where between the second and third period, I put a new belly pad on because it just drenched in sweat. Whereas now it just sheds the sweat. I played in a Masters tournament and swore I could still be playing if I had those pads, but but yeah, I think the Canadian nets at 4'6" now are the ideal size. I think 4'9's a bit too big, but I also think the goalie pads are too big. So, I don't know. If you make the nets 4'6", you got to also do something about the goalie pads because they're too big. And I'm not a huge fan of the OD. I find it too sort of formulaic, if you will, and the flow of the game isn't what it used to be, in my opinion. I used to like the run and gun that we played in Burnaby, and there's something missing in the game now with the guys running off and on every O and the D transition.
Yeah, you jumped the gun a little bit. That's my next question, but you'll.
Oh, sorry about that.
That's okay. Stay after school. You have to stay.
You won't need to ask me.
Exactly. Dallas, you sort of crossed both eras as far as the pads went. What are your thoughts on it? Just the way the position has evolved or devolved or whatever.
Yeah, you talk about evolution. Airplanes were once big and bulky, and now they're streamlined. The goalie gear, it's bigger now, and I don't know, I don't see a good reason for it to be that bulky. Plastics are stronger, foams are lighter, they're more durable. I would love to see the goalie gear get shaved down a little bit. It's to me, watching goalies now, it's almost a game of inches. You take a half step this way, a step that way, and you're filling up the net. The nets are big, but so is the equipment and padding. So I think the padding is a little bit big. I know I catch a lot of flack for that. I talk about smaller gear on social media. I'm not living in the past. I just think the game of the position is gone. It isn't so much a game anymore. There was a day when you had to go in there and throw your body to make a save. Now it's just moving a little bit, and that's fine and dandy. I know the league, they want more goal scoring, but they also want the position to be entertaining to watch. And I think with the bigger gear, it's taken a lot of the game out of the position.
Yeah, and Steve, you're you're obviously still active with the Bandits today, and it's kind of same as Dallas, played with and without the big pads.
Yeah, it's funny because you sit on the competition committee, and these are the same kind of conversations that we have in the NLL right now. Is how do we make the goalie smaller? How do we get more scoring? They're the questions that are going to continue to come up. But I agree with all three. I'm a bit hypocritical when I say this because I benefited from big equipment. But I agree, with the way Bodum makes their gear now and Max Lax with Marty O'Neill makes his gear now, there's no need for the size of the way they are. And the upper bodies aren't what concerns me the most. It's the size of the shin pads. You almost look like they almost look like they're wearing hockey pads out there some nights. So that's the thing. So if we can find a way, like Dallas said, to streamline a little bit, I think the game would be better as a whole because of it.
Yeah, I agree with all of you, and I'm glad, Steve, you brought up the leg pads because the upper body stuff is huge, but the leg pads, it's almost like there's two sets on. They're almost as big as hockey pads, and Dallas made a very good point. I think technology has made some great contributions to the game in training and nutrition and fitness and all that sort of stuff, and a lot of the equipment. Well, surely modern technology, you could make pads that are tremendously protective and still an awful lot smaller. I'm not an engineer or a scientist by the remotest stretch of the imagination, but it just makes sense to me that if they can put a little doodad roaming around on Mars, they can certainly figure out how to make pads that aren't as bulky. And the other thing, I don't know if you guys, maybe it's just me, but I notice today's goaltenders don't use their sticks anymore, or they use them strictly as a blocker. And I think partly because, like Wayne, you alluded to back in the day, you had to use your stick because everything else hurt. It was almost a survival mechanism as much as it was a shot stopping mechanism. But I just seems that the guys now, there's no, catching the ball, getting the ball quickly up the floor. It's the ball hits your stick and you kind of stare at it and eventually clamp at it. But I'd love to see the pads reduced. Now I've kind of jumped the gun a little bit here, but the position has changed. The game has also changed. In a number of ways, but I think I get the sense that we all sort of focus on the one thing that is coming to the game that we maybe aren't that thrilled about. So we'll go in our regular order. This way, us old guys, I can remember. I keep the same order all the time because that way I can remember it. Otherwise, it'd be all over the place. So Wayne, if you just have any thoughts on just the status of the game and the transition of the game and whatnot.
The status of the game, and again, watching how many what's in the attendance in the pro leagues. First, I never got the opportunity to play in the pro leagues because it folded and it came back into my era. But the closest team that I had was in Detroit, and they wanted you to drive there in the wintertime, so I didn't elect to take the NLL route. And then by then I was too old to play. But back to the goaltending, you never see, not never, but very seldom you see a goalie get an assist. Okay, so the goalie doesn't throw the ball. There's no 2-on-1s, 3-on-2s, and it's the offense defense that really hurts. And to fix that is, and I can only say for the Ontario Lacrosse League because I'm not sure what the BC rules are up there, is they got that player's change box in front of the benches for a reason. Both feet shall be in. That's how it's written in the rules. Shall be in that box before the next person steps out of the box. So I don't know where they get the 20, 30, 40, the 90 feet lead they get going off the floor and not the same going on the floor. So I don't know where those rules come in, but they seem to be okay with it. But if they eliminated that and called the rules the way they have it, where both feet have to be in the change box before the other person steps on the floor, there wouldn't be offense, defense. There would be 3-on-2s, and then the fans would be more excited when people are racing the ball down the floor. They call it the fastest game on 2 feet for a reason, and right now it's not.
Rod?
Yeah, I already commented earlier about missing the flow of the game and the fast breaks and the run and gun style. I think with the goalies, we're missing the reactionary type of goalie like yourself, Dave, and Dallas and Dwight Metke. I was a bit of a blend between the two styles, but the goalies don't seem to play that way. But yeah, I think I've talked to Paul Damani, the commissioner of the WLA, about maybe limiting the guys that could come on or off like when you're transitioning, but maybe limit one O guy coming to the bench when they're transitioning back to D. But I don't know what the answer is. It's not the same game necessarily that I played.
Yeah, Dallas?
Yeah, we talked about it. The offense, defense, it just kind of kills the flow. There's no consistency there. Steve's, he's in the middle of it, being on the rules committee, etc. I would love to see it go back to 3 lines and end-to-end action. That's the kind of game that I miss watching.
Yeah.
I don't know how they're going to do it, but that if I could change anything, that's what it would be. After the pad size, of course.
Yeah. Steve?
Well, to Dallas's point there, JT, John Tavares, our coach in Buffalo, he's thought about doing that, Dallas. He thought that, everybody followed Les Bartley from the offense defense. If we went back to 3 lines and had success, maybe that would change the game back and everybody would start doing it. But I think a big one for me is I think you have to stop playing offense defense up and I know they're not allowed, I don't think, to do it up until midget. I don't think you should be able to do it even in junior, because you look at a lot of guys now, you get star NLL players, and you really only can play 6, right? 5 go on the floor at a time, and you usually dress 6. So a lot of times you take a real good athlete that was an offensive player in junior, you bring him in and you teach him how to play defense because you want to start getting some transition. So it's eliminating all the kids that were off, the defensive kids that played that didn't have great sticks. So I think we need to get back to that where more more kids are learning the offensive side of the game so that when they get up to the pro level, they'll be better at it.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, we're getting really short on time here, so I will just state unequivocally, I hate the offense-defense system with a passion for any number of reasons, philosophical reasons. I just don't think it's fair to the players. You should learn to play the whole end of the floor. Quickly, we're going to jump ahead from what we talked about in our little pre-broadcast thing. Very quickly, just I'm sure people that are watching, we have coaches, kids watching, and you guys have all coached as well as obviously played. Any drills that you found as a player or as a coach that are really, really beneficial? And you got about a minute each to comment on it. Wayne.
Okay, what I liked best, I love practices. That was my favorite. I'd rather practice than play. I know I'm different. I'm a goalie. What I liked was when they, at the end of the practice, when they had a shootout, and I always shot for Pepsis, and I won a lot. And in a game situation, when somebody had a breakaway or it's the last minute, I would say we're shooting for Pepsis. Let's go, and that was my motivation.
I'm guessing Steve's shooting for ice cream.
I really meant Coke.
I didn't shoot for Pepsi's, Wayne. Mine was food and
Happening either.
Yeah, we called that showdown after the NHL. They used to have showdown, but I always like drills where they're shooting on the run. So, I mean, nowadays they they have a snake drill where the guys are cutting across and shooting on the run. I always like drills along that kind of line where, you're having to follow the shooter as he's actually shooting and they're not stationary.
Dallas, quick, you got 30 seconds, not even.
Yeah, I like any drill the goalie can make it into a game situation, like the last minute of the game. You can't get scored on. Do whatever you can, keep that ball out of the net, whether it be from outside screenshots in the perimeter or having a scrimmage at the end of practice.
Chuck?
To me, it's if you're doing 2-on-1s, 3-on-2s, whatever, always start the ball with the goalie. Like Wayne said, nobody throws the ball well anymore. Always incorporate that into every drill so the goalie becomes confident in his throwing ability.
Yeah, my take is any drill that mimics a game situation, 3-on-2s, 2-on-2s, 4-on-3s, anything where there's some defense or something. To me, some of the typical shooting drills where it's shot after shot after shot after shot after shot can just be counterproductive sometimes. Goalie gets tired, starts cheating, gets lazy. Get some defense of some kind into your drills. We're down to our last couple of minutes. Everybody, one last comment. Wayne.
Last comment. I just hope that.
Time's up.
Pardon me? Time's up.
Go ahead.
Tugger, you take my time.
No, go ahead. Sorry, Wayne.
I'm good.
Rod?
The friendships and the experiences are what's key.
Dallas?
I'm honored and humbled to be on this board with you guys. I'm a big fan of all of it. So thanks for having me.
And Steve?
Like Dallas said, I feel like I'm amongst royalty here, but I think the biggest thing too is play as long as you can. I think I retired in 2010 and I wish I played another 5 years because once you get past a certain age, there's no going back. So just play as long as you can.
Yeah. And my comment is, actually, Wayne, I'm like you. I like the practices better than the games, but enjoy it. Enjoy every minute of it. Enjoy the camaraderie, the competition. It's a great game. It's a great position to play. Thank you so much to you guys for joining us. We didn't get to everything we wanted to get to. Thank you so much. She's not on camera, but to Laura Swan with the Hall of Fame Board of Governors who set not only this panel up, but the other ones. And thank you so much to everybody for listening. I hope, what do? You listen or you watch? I guess you do both. But anyway, I hope that we've educated you to a certain extent and entertained you about goaltending. And thank you very much for watching. Thank you.
Thanks, Dave. Thanks, Laura.
Thanks, Dave.
Thanks, guys.
Guys, it's been a pleasure.
Yeah, great seeing you all. And it's an honor.
Steve, go have some ice cream.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks.